I wrote a book at age 18 and I never published it. Here is the story behind. So first of all, I was in my teenage years like, I wanna write a book at some day. And then I got into a phase where I basically started tracking my time. I started scheduling my time. I basically used time blocking and time scheduling, you could say, to define very short slots. For example, I picked up playing the piano. I still don't play very well, but at least I picked it up, and it was always something that I wanted to do. And at but when I was still in high school, at class 10, I guess, I just signed up for lessons and I just started playing, and I tried to very focused practice playing the piano within like 10 or 20 minutes, because I just didn't have more time while figuring out all these other things in my life, like school, like all the hobbies I had, like playing guitar and something like this. So I just said, okay, could I do like 10 or 20 minutes? And then I just got into piano. I still cannot really play according to notes very well. There was a time when this was something I could do, not very well, but I could theoretically do it. Now I just didn't do it for years, and I also don't really plan on doing it. I mean, it's very nice if you want to learn new pieces and actually be able to play them, but that's not really what I'm in for piano anyways. I mean, it would still be nice additionally, but yeah, well, so much about the piano. So therefore, I saw that it kind of worked. I mean, for these 10 or 20 minutes, for example, I often realized when practicing piano or guitar before that I just sat there and I just did random things, and I just played random melodies instead of actually practicing the piece I wanted to. I mean, in the beginning at least. And I just sat there, I didn't really concentrate, and this is not something that's very useful, neither for me, because I'm basically wasting my time, because I could also do something else. If I don't concentrate on the thing I am currently doing, then what am I doing? So therefore, I kind of realized that this is something that kind of works. So I started reading books 10 minutes a day, and what this allowed me to do is to read multiple books every single day. So to maybe read like 3 or 4 books, and then within the 40 minutes of reading, I just focused on the 10 minute on one book. I focused on 10 minutes and I made a few pages, and I then read the next book. What this also allowed me to do, and this is something I didn't really expect, was that I would just over time be like, so usually you read a book within like a few days or within like a week maybe. If you totally push it, you can read a book in a day, I guess. It depends on the book, obviously. Maybe 2 days, maybe 3 days. It doesn't really matter. The thing is, if you just take a book and make the reading times shorter but more frequent, basically every single day, what happens is that you just think about it all the time, because it's something that's part of your life. This topic, this book, is part of your life. And therefore, if you now read the book, and like, for example, I read a book about sports nutrition, and then the next day I was like, this thing, and I actually know where I left off the other day. And it's basically, instead of a book being this one event in your life where you read all of this and then in 2 weeks you forgot basically most of it, it turns into basically something that is in your life. And this taught me, I think, that I could just use very small time units and still do the things, because eventually you would finish the book, because then it's something like, oh yeah, today the last 10 minutes, that's the book. And it just works like this. It's not like, oh yeah, I finished this book and it's this great thing. No, it's just like, oh yeah, I did the usual 10 minutes and now it's just done because I read it. And I also wanted to apply the system. I mean, I kind of knew this would work. And so I had this idea for writing a book. And it was something I wanted to do eventually, and so I just started it. I just was like, okay, I just take the layout I already have, because I wrote the kind of thesis you write, at least in Germany, in high school, at the end of 12th grade, basically. So it's a small thesis, I guess. And so I just took the identical word layout and I just inserted my own titles, and there was my first draft. And then it wasn't like this big giant thing. So basically, once I had established the layout and I had put a little bit of effort into the layout of this thesis, therefore, because the thinking was this: if I write all of it, the thesis, and then I later would discover that the layout basically was all wrong, and I had formatted all wrong, and then maybe it would just be gone, and these are things I just didn't know how much time they would take. Therefore, I just took all of this formal work before. I just took all this formal work and I just did it before, and then I just could focus on the work itself, the thesis. So since I had this layout, then I just started writing the book. So I just, after I established the layout, not really the layout, but just basically just how the book would kind of turn out. So I had a title, I had a few chapter titles. So basically, yeah, what do you do if you want to write a book, I guess. But I mean, yeah, the next step was then to just use the next 10 minutes or the next 20 minutes. I think I did sometimes 10, sometimes 20. I cannot really remember at this point in time. But then I just was like, okay, what was the last thing I wrote yesterday? And then just try to continue the thing. Obviously, in 10 minutes, you cannot really do very much. If back then, for example, it took like 2 minutes to open a Word document, but at least on my PC. And what I realized over time is you have to take your time to get a little bit into it. So sometimes 10 minutes, I mean, you have to be very, very focused. So for example, the first minute is usually setup time, and then the last minute is set down time, because you cannot switch like from cooking in the kitchen to running with an instant, because you need actually a little bit of changing clothes time, for example, when it comes to changing into running clothes. So therefore, when it comes to writing, I mean, obviously it works with all the things that are connected, that are where the tools you need are like your notebook and a desk. So therefore, the switching times are not as long. So the switching time is much shorter. But I just then sat down every other day, or basically every day. I think I tried to write a little bit of the book. Basically, I think it was almost every day. And then I just wrote it. And then after quite some time, like a few months actually, I was at a point where I kind of ended the book. I didn't really end it as I wanted to, because the thing is this: because I wrote it over a huge extended period of time, and because I used such small time units, there is a problem. And this problem is that my style of writing kind of changed, and also my message kind of changed in the meanwhile, because I was still basically a teenager and I learned new things every single day. I mean, it's not that I don't learn new things now every single day, it's just that I learned, I guess, more things every single day, and also my view kind of changed, I guess, it's just that I kind of grew out of my writing style, I guess, within the period of a few months. It's not that I couldn't finish it, but when I started it, it was kind of my voice. It was how I would actually say these things, kind of. I mean, obviously, it's still writing a book, and you still try to make a narrative and also to sound as smart as somehow possible. But at the same time, it's kind of true for you. These are things that you think about, and I mean, it depends on what the book is about. The book actually was about like motivational things, like how to figure out things, and also habits, like stuff I would continue to think about for years. This was kind of just the first draft of all the things about time management and something like this. So the problem then was that over time I didn't really want to finish the book as I had started it. And this, I guess, is a problem with things in general. You kind of want to finish over a very long period of time, because sometimes you just don't want to do them. So therefore, there are two things you can do. You can either finish the book anyway when it comes to the book, or you could just say that it's not something you want to do anymore, and it's basically a fail. It's a failed attempt to write a book, and that's kind of what it is. I mean, it also is still a book. It has like 30 or 35 pages, which is not very much, I guess, but it still, I could publish it these days as a Kindle book or as something else, or I could just put a little bit more effort into it. And also, these are like normal pages, these are not like book pages, because book pages are usually quite small, actually, because most books are not like full-blown sheet of paper format, but much more a smaller format. Therefore, I mean, maybe it would be 50 pages. I actually made a Kindle file once, and I actually loaded it onto my Kindle, and it kind of worked, and I also made a cover, but I just never published it, because then I would also have to come up with a pseudonym or a name as a writer's name, because I didn't want to be like my real name connected to this thing, because I mean, it's something, at least now, my 18-year-old self wrote, and it's a few years ago, and I just don't want to put my name on something like this anymore, I guess. It's not that I'm not really proud about this thing I did in the past, about this book, or a failed book attempt I wrote, but it's much more that I just... I still can be proud and not publish the book. I mean, it would still be nice if it was a properly published book, but the thing is, continuing the book would now not be a very wise usage of my time anymore, because I just could do something different that's like more efficient than finishing something 18-year-old me started and wanted to finish. So that's kind of the story of the book I wrote, but also never really finished. And is there a big conclusion? I don't think so. Maybe the big conclusion is to just do these things. I mean, writing the book obviously opened up like other doors for me, like just talking about these things instead of writing about them, because I already wrote about them, therefore they are kind of more clear. There could be like many advantages to doing something like this, but there's also not, I don't want to end this on a like motivational message to just do the things you want to do. It's just the story of how I failed to write a book at age 18.